Hi, my name is Winsley, and welcome to my Promethean Doctrine tier list. Back at the beginning of April, I posted my complete tier list, which looks like this. And today I'm going to be going into why I placed each of the Promethean Doctrines where I did. While I expect that future expansions and patches will change how good some of these doctrines are and add a few others, the doctrines kept the values that they had when the game first launched up until the Tyrannosaurus patch, so for about 9 months, and I expect that these numbers will stay the same for a while now. Even if they don't, I think that these tier lists that I have prepared will remain useful, especially to new players who just want to have a general idea as to what is a good doctrine to take, when to take it, and why. There are 97 doctrines that I could find in the game, and while I would love to talk about them all in one video, I decided to break them into smaller, more digestible segments like this one. The first doctrine we're going to talk about here is the Phoenix Defense Protocols, which is in the A tier because it has a lot of potential to keep you safe from enemy advancements, and if you use it properly, you can bait your enemy into engaging you in your territory, and then you'll get a lot out of this doctrine, a lot of value out of this doctrine. I can't talk too much about it without actually showing you the values, so let's jump over to the game and look it up in the Imperial Archives. So it was Defense Protocols, right? So you can get +2 armor if in your domain and +6 operational defense, which will keep your cities from being the targets of covert operations. It'll keep the enemy from trying to steal your energy or your research or any of those other things that they can do on your city centers. I think the extra 2 armor is something that a lot of people will overlook or forget about because that +6 operational defense is very, very massive. But yeah, as long as you're not fighting somebody who can bypass armor, like somebody who can do psychic damage, that significantly increases the fighting ability of all of your units. It will make your tier 1 units a lot better. Going from like 1 or 2 armor to 3 or 4 armor is a big jump, and yeah, your tier like 4 or 5 units, they still get about the same amount of value as those lower tier units with the way they calculate armor. I think it has something to do with exponents instead of just being like, oh, if you got 1 more armor, you take 1 less point of damage. It actually is really smart about that. But yeah, I think that as long as you're bringing enough units into the fight to defend your territory, this should really help you hold the position with less units or with less quality units. So yeah, let's actually compare this to what we have around it on my complete tier list now. We have I think Hertur Doctrine off to the left, and I think that's a Devar Doctrine off to the right. I think that's Revised Safety Protocols and City of the Awakened. Let's go check that in game by just typing in stuff. Revised safety regulations makes it cheaper to build things, which I'm a big fan of. I think this is great in the early game. After a certain amount of terms, you'll probably want to drop it in favor of another doctrine, but building lots of buildings is very important in the early game. The more you do that in the early game, the more you'll get out of them in the all throughout the game, really. But it's still not quite as good as our Phoenix Defense Protocols. The City of the Awakened, however, it's quite nice. So this will make it so that you get a lot of extra happiness in all of your cities, and then you'll be able to get more colonists or more workers in your cities 20% quicker, basically. So you'll have a much more effective economy the earlier you implement this. It is a tier 7 tech, so it'll be kind of hard to get a lot out of it for a long time, for a lot of turns, but I think if you unlock this, you should go for it. Just like what was it, defense protocols. They're both for secret tech, so they're not exclusive. You wouldn't be going for one or the other. You'd be going for defense Phoenix protocols as a Promethean, or you'd be going for City of the Awakened as a Heritor. Alright, so yeah, I think we're ready for our next doctrine in the Promethean Doctrine tier list, which is Phoenix Armament Protocols. I like this one. I like this one quite a bit. I can't remember the exact discounts you get for it, but it is nice. Armament Protocols. Yeah, it makes your Promethean units 25% easier to build, and not easier, cheaper. You have to spend less energy to make them, and the upkeep is reduced by 25%, which is pretty significant. It says that your unit cost can never be lowered more than 75%, so this right here will do all of that for you for Promethean units, and then the upkeep can be reduced a tiny little bit more. That adds up. The energy that you save here really adds up over time, especially if you have massive armies. If you have a lot of armies, that reduction in upkeep will allow you to have even more. You can go up until you start to see like a negative upkeep up here, and then you want to be worried about how many units you have. Maybe selling off items or rewards from quests to keep you in the positive. So let's see, what did we have next to the Phoenix Armament Protocols? I'm gonna have to pull this up again just to check. I think that's Echo something rather, and then we have Indentured Servitude to the right of it. Let's see if we can find the Echo thingies first. I think it's Echo Protocols, maybe. No. You're not what I'm looking for. Echo Protocols, there we go. It is Echo Protocols, interesting. So yeah, this will make it so that any worker on any of these slots, food, energy, production, or research, will produce one more of their resource. If they were making 5 energy, they'll go to 6 energy. If they were making 8 research, they'll go to 9 research. So yeah, it's a very, very nice economic doctrine. It's only tier 3 tech, so you'll get it relatively early and be able to get a lot out of those economic bonuses. So for those reasons, I do think it's a really, really good doctrine and slightly better than Phoenix Armament Protocol. And then I think it was Indentured. This one, no, this one. Indentured contracts will give you plus 40% production in all of your colonies for 8 happiness if you are producing. If you have a lot of production in any of your colonies, that's a pretty good trade. I mean, 8 happiness is a lot of happiness, but you'll probably make a giant amount of production as a result. If you've got 100 production, which isn't that hard to get, plus 40% will give you 40 more production, and I think a worker can make 5 production just as easily as they can make 5 happiness. Let's just check that really quickly here. So you can make 5 production or 5 happiness. Yeah, they're about the same. So you really do get a lot of value out of that doctrine. What was it called? I've even forgotten now. I know what it is if I look at it. Indentured contracts. Yeah, indentured contracts is really nice if you have places that can build units. But I think potentially Phoenix Armament Protocol just saves you more energy, or it saves you energy, which is slightly harder to manage than production. So it's more valuable because of the resource that it works with. And now we are ready to go back to this one to see what's next, and that's Extermination Protocols, which I think I know what it does. I think it gives you extra damage, but it does something else other than that. It is going to give you even more damage if you're going up against Xenoplague. So you get plus 10% damage no matter what. That's amazing. There's a lot of things that will only give you that boost to damage if you're fighting against certain units. Of course, if you're fighting Xenoplague, you're going to get an even bigger boost, but the fact that it's just like 10%, no other conditions, makes this a really, really nice option. You do have to spend 200 energy to get it, and I'd understand why you'd think that is too much for that boost, but I like it. It's pretty nice. Of course, there are some better options for the Prometheans and for a lot of other of the combinations out there, but I think it's competitive with a lot of the other better doctrines just because of that raw boost to damage. Now, what is it next to? We'll have to pull this up to see. It is next to Planetary Swarm and I think Total War something rather. Okay, let's go find those guys in our game. Total War thingies makes it so that you get extra experience on your new units and that they're cheaper to make. That's quite good. It's very, very nice. It will help you get very strong armies out there for not a lot of energy. I mean, energy is a pretty limiting factor, so saving on that is super cool. And if you're saving on that on like a tier 4 unit, that's a lot of energy. Putting in extra rank on like a tier 4 unit, very nice. Putting on a smaller unit, you know, it's good. It's not terrible, but it's not nearly as good as going with those higher tier units. I think potentially you can get more out of this doctrine than the raw 10% damage that the Extermination Axe gives you, but that's only if you have enough time in a game to build up an army using Total War automation. If you're at the last 10 turns, you are going to get more out of Extermination Protocols than Total War thingy. And yeah, to the right of Extermination Protocols is Planetary Swarm. Let's go find that. Planetary Swarm. Now I can spell. Swarming, planetary swarming. So yeah, upkeep for all Kir'ko units is reduced by 35%. In addition, all light units are 20% cheaper to produce. I think this one is nice, but the fact that the reduction only goes on light units means that you're not getting the reduction in units I like personally. Even as playing the Kir'ko, I like using tier 3 and tier 4 units in the late game. I think that you get more stack density. I've heard people refer to it as stack density. You get more power per unit or per stack if you use those higher tier units. So yeah, it's not nearly as good, but it's still pretty darn good in terms of the doctrines that you have available. I mean, they're both within the A tier. One's just higher up than the other one. And yeah, I think we are now ready to move on to our last doctrine in the Promethean Doctrine tier list. That is Phoenix Colonization Protocols. So what does that do? I don't know. There it is. It says that all of your colonies ignore the economic penalties from hazards and volcanics. So it's good unless you're playing Devar, because I think the Devar have another way to ignore the penalties from volcanic. But it's not amazing. It's something that you can get around pretty easily. Removing hazards is not that hard to do, and building around volcanic territory is generally pretty easy to do. You don't have to take the volcanic territory, and I think once you take one of the techs, you can get around it through upgrading the sector. But I'm definitely less certain about that. I think they're, yeah, like this will allow you to, yeah, ignore all the economic penalties from volcanic terrain. So there's other ways to go about it. You don't have to take that doctrine. And yeah, I think we're ready to now talk about what it compares to, which is, looks like it's almost underneath my face. So we have an Empire Quest over there, and what's to the right of that? I think that's Secret State over there. Let's pull up the Empire Quest first. Oh, did I just forget what I was looking at? That's not good. It was the one with the hands together. The green one with the hands together. Harbinger. So Harbinger will make it so Doomsday structures are easier to build and the operations are easier to use. I think, yeah, potentially you'll get more out of this than the colonization protocols. Colonization protocols, yeah, they'll allow you to grab some more territory. This is going to allow you to wrap up a game if the Doomsday stuff is enacted, and if it's not, you may be able to get some nice Doomsday operations. I know the Heriter have some really nice one. I like the Prometheans Doomsday stuff. And just, yeah, making those cheaper could be very, very valuable, but you have to invest an awful lot in order to make this a useful doctrine. By itself, it's like, yeah, I'd pass on this. So yeah, now let's look up Secret State. I think that's what that gray one was. Yeah, there we go. This will give you +5 operational defense, and you know, if you just compare this to the first doctrine we looked at, that gave you +6 operational defense, this only comes with the 5 operational defense. So the other one is just all around better. You can see that when you compare it to this. It's easier to unlock, being tier 3 technology, but you know, there's definitely better options out there once you get better tech, and you know, even some of the lower tier things are more competitive than this. I love like Noble Diplomats or the Scavenger Doctrine. Those are amazing ones, and they're both very, very early game doctrines. And yeah, that's everything I wanted to talk about with this tier list. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you around. Have a good one.